we decided to really change our ship, and we devoted ourselves to sustainable living. And that is all encompassing, which includes growing our own local organic food. Some of that, one of the big steps was getting our bees. You see our beehives right down here. We started doing the bees. The bees gather the pollen. The pollen's in our food every morning. I have a little honey on my omelet almost every morning. And so our immune systems are getting introduced to the pollen that was giving us some of the airborne allergic reactions prior. And it just works. It just works. We chose, while we're talking about the bees, I want to tell you why we put the beehives over there. Oh, our first beehive, it was way up by the road. I was scared of the bees. We were going to have these bees. But after we started handling the bees, we got comfortable with the bees, and we thought, well, they're not so dangerous. I was waiting on them to be like Winnie the Pooh and running with the bees chasing me, but that hasn't happened yet. So we put the house down there, and the reason we put the house down there is because generally in the wintertime, they get early, and in the summertime as well, they get early morning sun to bring the temperature of the hive back up to where the bees are most comfortable. And then we have midday and afternoon shade right there. And that was when the bees would be trying to cool the hive back off. They like to keep it about 100 degrees in there. And so early morning sun after the cool nighttime temperatures lets their environment warm back up. Afternoon shade prevents it from, so they can spend all their time working, not to keep the hive the right temperature, but going out and gathering honey and pollinating our garden. And that is just, the bees are just one tiny little piece of our puzzle here. And so, that being said, let's walk into the backyard and we'll show you some of the other stuff that we're doing to be self-sufficient here. And then we'll go on down to the gardens in a bit. One of the things that we wanted to do when we kind of wanted to become self-sufficient is not just about food, because if we think about that, it's about food as well, but energy as well. And that's why I wanted to walk you guys out here. Maybe we could step over here just a little bit and you can see better. So, over that course of time, the last 15 years or so, we have been able to actually reduce our outside power consumption by about 75%. We've done that through a lot of ways. One, we put in a wood burning stove. So this is a 2,500 square foot house, and we have a wood burning stove in there, and it's very, very efficient model. It looks like an old stove, but it's really very efficient. And that stove heats our entire house. We have a sunken den. We put it down in the bottom of the house where the cold air is, and it just naturally rises throughout the house. We've been doing that for about 12 years now, and we've not cut a green, living, nice tree to burn in our stove yet. We've got 160 acres here, and there are just enough fallen limbs and storm-damaged trees that we've been able to burn only those, which would lay out there and rot, so we're able to use that resource that we thought we considered a waste at one time. And so now it's been heating our house for 12 years. But here we are in Alabama, it's much harder to keep the house cool than it is to keep it warm. So the heating was easy. To keep the house cool, we've done a number of different things. And in my prior business, I found out that if I bid a job and I needed to save 10% on that job to make the job profitable, I probably couldn't look and find one place to save 10%, but I could find 10 places each to save 1%, which would get me there. So that theory is what we used to cool our house. So we've done a number of different things. One of which is we replaced the old shingle roof with a light colored tin roof. Shingles reflect only 20% of the heat that hits them. And there's a lot of heat that hits that shingle roof. The light colored tin reflects 80% of the heat and only absorbs 20%. So that's quadruple the amount of just reflectivity, which helps keep the house cool by just choosing a different material for our roof. Then we put reflective tint on all the windows. You can kind of see it at the angle of the upstairs windows right back here. It's reflective tint. That reflective tint reflects about 90% of the sunlight, or not the sunlight, but the heat. You think of sunlight, the light and heat, and those are two different things. the light carries the heat. So we're able to allow the light to go in the house, but reflect the heat with that window tint. We just bought it at Lowe's. We put that on. That was one of our little steps. The next big thing that we did is, you can hear it going right now. So look up at the top of the roof and there's some water splashing down over the top of the roof. So what that is doing is that is an evaporative cooling system. So what we did was we gutted the entire house, and then we got this big tank that's right up in the corner of the patio back there. And what that does is it catches all our rain. So that's a giant rain barrel. 1,500 gallons. We have enough roof area channeled into that a 2-inch rain will completely fill that 1,500 gallon water barrel. Just a 2-inch rain. So it stays full almost all year round on its own. Then we have a little bitty electric pump that I got for like $80 was all. That pump is on a timer. So the timer will turn the pump on and it will run 1 minute like it just did, and then it'll be off 9 minutes. Yeah. It runs 1 minute, just enough for that sprinkler system to wet the roof, and then while it's off the 9 minutes, the sun is evaporating that water off of the roof. The water absorbs the heat that is in the tin, and it carries that heat away. And it does not allow that heat to radiate down through the tin, on into the attic, and then down into the house. So the reflective tin kicks away 80% of the sun's heat, allowing only 20% in. Then the evaporative cooling system takes a little bit. When we put the tin on, we put our 1x4 spaces that normally that tin would be affixed to. Instead of running them sideways, we put them on 45-degree angles so that that little bit of air space underneath that would be able to chimney up to the roof vents up there and let that little bit of heat that is getting in there escape out and not go down into our attic. Used to, I could go up there and the attic would be like 120 degrees. Now, by doing this, the attic only gets 7 degrees warmer than the inside of the house. Only 7 degrees. So the last and final step that we did to the house itself was, if you look back here on the ends of the top of the eaves way up there, there's some little vents. So we have a fan up there. And at nighttime, when the sun sets and the outside temperature gets cooler than the inside temperature, we raise the downstairs windows that are shaded, turn the fan on, and that fan starts blowing the heat out of the attic, sucking in the cool air from downstairs. And we leave that on all night. So in the morning when we wake up, the temperature inside the house is equivalent to the temperature outside the house. Here in Alabama, the average temperature of our hottest 3 months in the summertime, July, August, and September, the average nighttime temperature is 69 degrees. Average low nighttime temperature. So we're starting our mornings at 69 degrees on average inside the house. We wake up in the morning, we turn that fan off, shut all the windows, it's got all, and then we do our reflective thing all day. We get 7 degrees of rise inside the house. So we go from 69 on average to 76. Air conditioner never turns on. We got it. Had to do a lot of little tiny steps to get there, but it works now, and our power bill has actually dropped by 75%. Roof up there, we actually made a solar powered hot water heater. So to do that, it was really cool. Well, it was really hot too. I went to the junkyard and I bought an old electric hot water heater for $2. Okay, cost effective. $2. So I brought it home and we stripped it open and we got the tank out of it. Because inside that tank is this baffle system. So that when the water gets inside the tank, heats up and expands it. I'm not making a bomb. So I did that. I insulated the tank. I painted it flat black, took a single sheet of plywood and built that box, painted the box black, insulated the whole thing, and I set that tank down in there and put a piece of plexiglass over it. And then I put it on an angle so that it can catch the most sun and allow it. And then our water, the well out of our water comes out of the well at 57 degrees, okay? So a nice shower is about, way warmer than that. I hate a cold shower. so our well water goes first to the solar hot water heater. The solar hot water heater heats it up to about 125 degrees. Our electric hot water heater only heats up to 120. So this gets it a little bit hotter than our electric hot water heater. And then I routed that water from the solar heater to the electric heater. I didn't remove the electric heater, but the water going into the electric heater is already warmer than it's going to get it, so it never turns on. Now we've got it there as a backup in case this gets covered with snow or something, which is not going to happen, but it goes from there. So it's a solar preheater, not just our sole means of heating our water. And that in turn lowered our power bill. This tree right here is a Boyington oak, and it is the only oak tree that is endemic to Alabama, meaning it evolved here and nowhere else. Now you can go down and find them elsewhere because people have taken them there, but endemic to the state of Alabama. We also have a wonderful aerospace engineering program in the Alabama with Huntsville and the aerospace over at Auburn and all. So we have a higher percentage of NASA astronauts that have worked, trained went to college in the state of Alabama, which is really cool. On one of the early Apollo missions, one of those Alabama astronauts was allowed to take a personal effect around the moon with him, and he chose to take a small container of Boyington oak acorns. When he got back, everybody wanted one. And he gave one to the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, and the tree is up there and it's massive now. And a dear friend of ours named John Mannion is the native plant curator at the Botanical Gardens, and he took one of those acorns and he sprouted this tree. And it's very special because I could tell everybody that this tree's daddy actually went around the moon, and not many trees can say that. It is really cool.
Super cool.
Over here is one of our chicken houses. So we have a mixture of chickens, and get our eggs from here, of course. We did meat chickens for a while. That's so much trouble. We still do it occasionally, but in moderation. And we have raised meat chickens as well. But these are our egg laying areas. So we come out here every afternoon, gather some eggs. They're beautiful. We'll show you some of the eggs in a little bit. They're so colorful. I think my wife Laura chooses the chicken for the egg card. Metal milk container, and we actually put that in the freezer the night before, so the container itself is super cold. She goes directly into that, then pours the milk into some pre-cooled mason jars. This is this morning's milk right here. So we'll pre-cool the mason jars and pour out of the milking container into the mason jar, and then stick it immediately in the fridge. And that's what we end up with. So this is all this morning's milk, by the way. And cheese is out of goat's milk. When we do that, it ends up 6 parts away. Right? So we reduce the volume. And about 85% of the volume of the goat's milk away. After that, we don't even waste the clay. That goes into the bin. She has a whole line of goat's milk soaps and lotions. They are fantastic. There's another thing that we learned to keep our family in good health is to use our goat's milk to make our own soaps and lotions. It's all organic. And the beauty of it is that goat's milk, if you look at the molecular strands of goat's milk, it is very, very close to human. So when you use a goat's milk soap or goat's milk lotion and put that on, it bonds to your skin. It's perfectly hydrates your skin much better than something that has had preservatives and things added to it to give shelf life. Oh, we were talking about the color of the chicken eggs. So here's some that were gathered yesterday afternoon. And they're beautiful, all different shapes and colors and whatnot. And so the egg does not have to be refrigerated to give it. I can remember going to town early in the morning and there'd be eggs sitting out on the sidewalk that had gotten dropped off that night, non-refrigerated. The egg naturally has a protective coating on the outside of it. Once we refrigerate it, that protective coating, which is a bacterial coating that is there to repel other bacteria, once you refrigerate it, it kills the protective bacteria. So once you refrigerate it, then you have to keep it refrigerated. But until then, you can actually keep these out for about a month, and it'll be fine. As long as you don't damage that protective coating that Mother Nature has put.
So when do you wash them?
So we do wash them. Actually, after we gather up some over here for maybe a day or two, and then we'll wash them and put them in here and refrigerate them. But once they go in here, they have to stay in here. So here we are in the Selma chalk area, the black belt area. The Selma chalk is just about the worst thing you can imagine for growing vegetables in. The pH is incredibly high. It is a very small particulate, so it compresses and compacts. That gives our plants just absolute fits. Our layer of chalk here that was beneath our topsoil is about 400 feet thick. So there's a whole lot of it down there. If we dig down more than about a foot deep, we'll hit that white chalky soil. And I know what that means. That means 8.3 pH, right? There's no nutrients, there's very little organic matter in it. It is not what the plants like. So instead of battling Mother Nature on this crazy huge level, we decided to do a lot of raised bed gardening instead. So we have a massive amount of composting going on just out the other side of these trees out here. When that compost is ready, we bring it in here, we put it in our raised beds. I've sent it to Auburn and had it analyzed 50 times, I bet. And it is spot on. So you can look at our garden, our plants all look nice and healthy and happy, and they did not look that way when we were planting them directly in the ground. So we do a lot of raised beds. I know there's a big debate about using railroad cross ties for your raised bed container. I wanted to use cross ties. I love repurposing stuff. To be sustainable, we need to be able to figure out how to take our garbage and turn it into something that we can use. So these used cross ties are accessible, they're cheap, they'll last a long time. And the only negative aspect about those would be the possibility of the creosote leaching out into our soil. So here's our solution, and right over here you can kind of see it. We use this house wrap to line the inside of the bed right here. So that house wrap is very, very cheap. I had some of it left over. So this is a moisture and vapor barrier. We lined all the inside of all the cross ties with that. What that house wrap would do is it's directional. It's sort of like a funnel. So it will allow, if we put it on there correctly, the house wrap will allow moisture when it gets too wet in our garden beds to go out through the house wrap. But it will not allow moisture from outside to go in through the house wrap, and that prevents any chance of any leaching of the creosote into our soil. So the beauty about all of this is that with all this compost right here, it's just like mulching, and that compost is going to stay moist longer than soil would, which means the natural rainfall is going to do more of our watering. And then underneath this, we've got drip line systems. And so we're trying to do everything we can to do as much watering with the rain and not with our well as possible because of that pH issue. And then we use this keynote system right here because it's accessible from the side. You're not tromping out through the bed very much, and it's a very efficient use of space. And I also think it's kind of pretty instead of this big square raised, you know. And so, yeah. A lot of this is ornamental, you know. We want this to be a happy, comfortable space.
So we try to keep it pretty and mix things up a little bit and add flowers in here and there. So I've really tried heavily to put in a lot of perennials, because who wants to go out there and replant everything every year. It's always exciting when you see that first little leaf come up and you go, oh, I know what that is. So we've got tons of herbs. This is marjoram, and I wish y'all all had a bucket today because I would send you home with roots and all, because I need to thin it out big time. So we've got marjoram here, we've got bee balm, so that comes back every year and of course is really good for the bees. And we've got the tall flowers here, the purple, this is echinacea, and purple coneflower, which is you can also use to make tea, and I've got that just scattered all around, and it's coming back just with a vengeance too. And then of course I've also got zinnia and things like that scattered about, some mums and marigolds, and I'm sure you know marigolds are a natural insect repellent, so I've got those at the end of each one of the keys. Rosemary, again, lemon balm, if anybody needs any of that, just snap some because it's beginning to take over the garden. Got sage. My sage and my lavender are living, but that's about all I can say for them. They said they refuse to die, so they're hanging in there. So I don't know what's going on with that, and that may be, somebody was asking about the shade, that may be a shade issue. I may have them in too much shade. So, but anyway, this is just, it's a fun place, and of course every plant has a story. We have the interns. I don't know if Chip's talked yet about the intern program that we're part of. So kids come to us throughout the whole world, and I can look at the sage and the rosemary and the cutting celery here, which is not your stalk celery, but it's a leaf celery, and it comes back every year. But that was put in 2016 by a young couple from Louisiana. This is commonly called leaf celery, and it just has a really strong celery flavor on the leaf. You would eat it just like you do parsley. You cut it just like you do parsley, but it gets the big stalks. You can see where I cut it. It gets the big stalks, but the stalks are super fibrous, I mean, even more so than regular celery. It's not something you can really chew, but it's excellent if you're making stock. You're doing bone broth or veggie stock. It's excellent for that. I've got asparagus back there. I'm really proud of my asparagus. So I haven't harvested yet. It's on its third year, so I'm hoping next year for a bumper crop of asparagus. There's just enough now to eat when you're out here in the garden and not tell anybody about it. We don't have any.
Way to go.
Exactly. And then 2018 was big. 2019 is crazy. I've actually worried that I don't know what
to do because it's, I had two different kinds, and one was in the front yard and one in the back. The ones in the front yard, 3 plants are still living, and only one of them dead. The ones in the backyard, only one is dead.
So I've always been interested in animals. I wanted to learn how to farm, to grow my own crops and to raise my own pigs and cows, so the website has a profile for each farm, so the profile said they have goats, chickens, pigs, cows, so things I was interested in. And I came for 2 weeks, being my first farm. That was going to be the longest I'll be away from home by myself. So I'm 20 years old. I was 19 when I came here, and actually next month I'll be 21. So anyways, I came just 2 weeks. I tried to find a farm closer to home, but because it was winter, many of the farms up north were closed for the winter. So I came down here, and again 2 weeks, and I asked to stay another month, and that month turned into this. So since I've been here, I've gotten really close to the family, I've made some family myself inside Selma, and truly I've learned a lot. I've learned more, not just farming, but life skills. Problem solving is a big thing around here. So we encounter problems every day. It's always something new, and learning how to overcome it, not pout about it or to just put it off, but how to analyze a problem and then solve step by step has been a big thing. And also learning how to have roommates. I'm an only child, so roommates was a new thing for me.
So they don't all live on the couch. You must have made it.
We did. As we like to do that, we created a little area right down here, and so we call it the bunk house. So we've got a couple of areas down there, and made a little workable kit. After 150 years of poor farming practices, about 2/3 of our topsoil has eroded away. We've now got about a foot of topsoil out here on top of all that chalk, and it used to be 3 feet here. It's now in the Gulf of Mexico. So we needed to not just maintain our soil, but we needed to renovate, reestablish. We need to make the soil better. So our soil samples were telling us 600 pounds of amendments per acre per year. And then we started delving into our science. And over the course of the last 15 years, we've brought our soil back. And our latest soil samples that I just got back about 10 days ago, that 600 pounds of outsourced fertilizer recommendation per year is down to 120. That's because we have made our soil so much better through adding back to it. So one of the ways we do it, if you look at our pastures and then compare them, I wish we could look right through the woods and look at the neighbor's pasture over there. You'll see that we've got a lot of grass out here. There's a lot of grass. Each one of these blades of grass is just a tiny little solar panel that is capturing the sun's energy and converting that into organic matter. So if we were to mow or to allow our pastures to be overgrazed, those solar panels are gone, and all of that free energy from the sun will bounce right back out into the sky. So keeping our pastures high is better because the grass is able to conduct photosynthesis. Also, it's better for the environment. Our milkweed, when you leave here, look out in our pasture, you see a lot of milkweed coming up out of there. Those monarch butterflies are laying their eggs on that milkweed out there. And if I leave that milkweed there for a while, allow it to make seeds before I mow our pasture, not only am I allowing our grass to do all of this capturing of this free energy, but also it's better for the native plants and animals as well. So we do that. We let our grass seed out. Another way is through the way we maintain our animals, and that's why we're here and talking about it right now. One of the things that we do is we create our own feed here. We create it from this. So this right here is spent brewers' grains from microbreweries in Birmingham, Montgomery, and Tuscaloosa. So we're getting about 20 of these barrels. This is 300 pounds full. We're getting about 20 of these a week. And we're using this stuff as the basis of our feed program. It makes up about 85% of what we feed. Now, this stuff is better than me going to the co-op and buying corn or soybeans or something to feed these animals, which is your macronutrients in most animal feed. The reason it's better is because it has been fermented. Now, everybody here's probably familiar with doing sauerkraut or kimchi or kombuchas, all of that stuff, right? And it's better for us. The reason it's better for us is that bacteria go in there and they break that food source down a little bit, take it all apart. It's almost like it's pre-digested. They're doing that work for us. So the same amount of nutrients is in it, but it's in a form that our metabolism can absorb more of the nutrients that's in our food if it's been fermented previously. Well, the breweries are doing that for me. They're fermenting this grain, and they use homolactic fermentation to do that. That's what's happening in this fermentation process. It's disassembling the complex proteins and carbohydrates that are in the grain. So when the cow eats it or the goat eats it, their digestive system doesn't have to work as hard to take it apart and absorb all those nutrients. It makes those nutrients more available. Same thing happens in your soil. If your pH is out of balance, your nitrogen may be out there, but the plant can't uptake it because that pH is out of balance and it won't allow the plant to absorb the nutrients in the soil. So we look at that same thing in our plants. So then we're taking and we're getting about 6,000 pounds of this a week, and we break it down into how much we feed each group of animals. We're feeding 6,000 pounds of this a week. The animals can actually gain about 2,000 pounds of body weight from eating 6,000 pounds of this fermented grain. So where does the other 4,000 pounds go?
Back into the soil.
Back into the soil. We're outsourcing 4,000 pounds of animal manure that is great for our soil because it's acidic, right? And we got to lower our pH. So by me bringing this in, not only am I getting fermented feed that is making our products even better, but I'm also outsourcing acidic organic matter that is lowering the pH of our soil. That's exactly the way nature should work. If we weren't inhabiting Alabama, what would be happening out here in these fields was about once a year this giant herd of buffalo would come through here and they would intensely graze all the grass, leave 2/3 of it laying in piles out there, and move on. So that's the way we're organizing our pastures here. We've got 3 big pastures for the cows. We've got 3 pastures for the goats. We've got 3 pastures for the pigs. And we rotate those animals all the time on 2-week intervals, allow them to graze intensely, turn all their feed into manure, and then we move them on where they're not living in their own feces. Go to greener pastures, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and then back to the original pasture for 2 weeks. The reason we go on 2-week intervals is because that allows us to break the internal parasite life cycle that's living in those animals, the worms. We can break the worm cycle. So the worm life cycle, which gives you most of your health issues in your plant, in your animals, are from parasites. So if we can break that life cycle of the parasite, we don't have to use chemical wormers for our animals. So the life cycle of the internal parasites is the worms lay the egg inside the animal. The egg comes out in the feces, lays on the ground for 2 or 3 days. The egg will hatch, turn into a larva. It'll grow for about 7 to 10 days until it matures enough that it'll climb up to the top of the grass. The next animal will eat that grass, and then the worm gets out of this cow into that cow. But if we can rotate before those eggs hatch out there and learn and mature enough to re-inhabit the next animal, we move our herd to another place. And we're going to leave all those larvae out there in that grass, but they won't have a host, and they can only live out there for about 2 weeks. And if our animals are gone in those other 2 pastures for a month, by the time they get back to pasture number 1, there's no re-inhabiting of the worms. So we just move all the animals to a new field on 2-week intervals, leaving all the manure behind. And so we're actually adding more caloric energy out there to those fields than we're removing by harvesting pork or beef or milk or something and selling that away. And through after year after year after year of that going on, then our soil samples from our pastures are coming back to each year that number of needed outsourced fertilizer is going down with each passing year. We're actually not just sufficiently maintaining our soil, but we're actually regenerating it as we farm it, and that is awesome. No farmer who has ever lived in Alabama has done that up until this generation. When we learn all the science behind it, plan for that, and then measure our success by our soil samples and not by the bottom line on the tax return. And it just works. So we're going to leave, I don't know who's going to farm this off after I'm dead and gone, but they're going to find a farm that's in a whole lot better shape than from when I found it. And that means if we can do it, then everybody can do it. And hey, the planet's going to be all right. You know, it's going to be all right. We're not going to run. We're not going to run out of resources if we figure out how to maintain them. And it's really, really cool. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it.